This was always how it was going to turn out. What did we expect? We saw Yowman, Ozzy, Malcolm, Tina, Wentworth, and David all go out in fourth place. Realizing that they could not be beaten in a jury vote, the other three contestants decided to just unanimously vote them out, leaving us all to wonder. What could have been? They could have been our winner, if only they had done something a little bit differently in the challenge. It wasn't fair. They were robbed goddesses. If only they could be given another chance. If only.
I mean, that's it, isn't it? That's the one thing we're talking about, or at least it feels like it demands the most attention. Regardless, I think this will be a very short review, because I meant what I said earlier. Everything about this season, except the ending, feels like it's on autopilot. There's no plot. There's no real story. Nothing that demands it keep your attention. It's just white noise fading into the background. It's not to say it's a horrible cast. I mean, everyone besides Katrina, Rourke, Simone, JP, and I guess Desi have something to contribute, which is more than I can say for Ghost Island, but I just don't care. I do not care. The pre-merge has some fun, lighthearted, and just pure insane moments, like Lauren's vendetta against Patrick and Alan being a crazy person and demanding JP's strip. There's some fun activity after the swap, like Joe wrecking everyone's plans with his idol on the Levu tribe. I will say, my favorite inconsequential part of the season, and the only thing that kept Jessica and Cole off the irrelevant list, is the misadventures and shenanigans of Cole annoying everyone on the Yawa tribe, including his showmans. And then there's the power struggle between Chrissy and Allie, a power struggle that Allie didn't even know she was in. But listen to how I sound. I don't sound all that excited, do I? Everything's just cool and nice and okay. And Survivor can be more than just cool and nice and okay. It can be amazing, or epic, or weird, or awful, or it can be good at being amazingly, epically, weirdly awful. But it's usually not boring. Hell, even calling it boring seems to be a bit of a disservice, because that would at least imply that there was at least some sort of reaction that came out of me that made me go, huh, this is rather boring. Not even that happened. I wasn't bored by Triple H. I felt literally nothing. It just drags its feet, always being consistently okay, but refusing to be actually interesting or engaging or exciting in the least. And like I said, I like this cat. Ashley, Chrissy, Ryan, Ben even. I like Devin, Mike. I love Lauren. Like, holy shit, did I forget how much I stan this lady. In fact, my general fondness of the cast is probably the only thing keeping me as positive as I am in this review. Rarely does a season of Survivor generate so much nothing than this season does. Not even the season after it, Ghost Island. The season that's like the quintessential irrelevant, nothing feeling season. Because at least then, again, it was so boring that it elicited some sort of reaction out of me. This isn't even that. It can't even do that right. However, it does pick up around episode 8. That's when the season finally gets a pulse, because that's when that reward happens. You know the one I'm talking about. The one with the family-sized serving of spaghetti that's not even remotely a family-sized serving of spaghetti, but whatever. It actually is holding a clue to where the idol is hidden. Cole sees it and doesn't hide it. Well, he makes like a feeble little attempt to hide it. He puts like food on it or whatever, and then Chrissy sees it, and she doesn't hide it, because why would she? And then Ryan comes in and hides the plate by burying it in the ground and then straightening the tablecloth to try to make it look normal. It's the funniest thing all season, and only goes to show that Chrissy and Ryan are not as good at this game as they think they are. In fact, Ryan gets the idol and then tells his closest ally, Devin, that he's the only one who knows. But he can't keep his mouth shut and reveals this information to Ben, which he then capitalizes on by telling Devin, creating a rift between the two. This beautifully connects with what happens next. Up to this point, the merge has pretty much just been a ho-hum pagonging of the healers, only saved by the ironic realization that Joe was right all along and they should have gotten Ben out while they had the chance. But then Lauren wins a reward challenge, and strategically picks the people with whom she wants to form a tighter sub-alliance. She talks to Ashley, Ben, and Devin on the reward, and they decide that this is what they want to be the final four, and they decide to blindside JP next. Why JP? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I can only assume that the producers asked them to do that because upon it getting exciting, they didn't want to lose an actually interesting contestant. Isn't it better to flush the idol when they least expect it? Well, regardless, Devin then decides to start playing 4D chess. Because they already have the numbers because of the stray votes of outsiders Mike and Joe, Devin comes up with an ingenious plan by having Ben vote for Mike, leading the others to believe that Ben is on their side so he can stay in their good graces and leak information to the new sub-alliance. This is already a brilliant plan of duplicity and deception, but it also has an extra layer of brilliance by not letting Joe and Mike in on the plan either. Only the core four know that Ben is actually on their side. It's so good, and if it weren't for what happens next, it would join the group of seasons like Karamoan and Salmon del Sur, where, they start out unbearably slow, but finally gain incredible momentum in the last half of the season. I love every single minute of this 3-episode stretch, from Chrissy and Ryan being absolutely floored and equally convinced that Ben is totally 100% on their side. I love the fact that it was such an epic blindside, yet we didn't even lose anyone important. In fact, we lost easily the most irrelevant contestant of the season. I love the fact that Joe is rubbing Ben's face in it, completely oblivious to the fact that he's in on the plot, and then having that realization come crashing down as Joe is the next one to get voted out. It's fantastic. It's everything I love about Survivor. The plans on top of plans, the deception, the irony, and the sudden realization of the people left out of the loop. It's perfect. And besides the slaughtering of the men in one world, it's easily the best stretch of episodes we've covered since this whole thing started. Maybe I'm just this excited because it's a lovely respite from the borefest I've been subjecting myself to for the last year, but man, this was a refreshing run of good episodes in an otherwise sea of mediocrity. But of course, you all know what happened after. And those of you who don't, probably caught on that my opinion of the season is not nearly as positive as I just let on. Because, like I said at the top, this is the season that broke Survivor. First of all, about the idol run. I honestly do not care about the fairness anymore. I'm so sick and tired of talking about the idols after HHH and Edge of Extinction. You all know my stance on this. Idols are being hidden at the same rate that they always have. An idol gets played, an idol gets re-hidden. And the others should not have been either so complacent about not finding the idol, or they shouldn't have been so obvious as to whom they were targeting. We've gone through this before. It's been talked about to death, and even worse, I've talked it to death. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm upset it happened, but it was a perfectly avoidable situation. But good God, why did it have to be so damn boring? Remember what I just said about the double-crossing and hidden layered plans being so much fun? Well, what if instead of that compelling politics, the votes were decided by idols, solely by idols, and specifically, idols being played by one person over and over again with no variety? Yeah, it gets boring after a while. I'm not one to say that simply having idols and advantages make a season worse. Some of the greatest moments in the show have been because of idols. Parvati's double play, Russell playing the idol for Parv, and the Tyson vote, all the times idols got played in Samuel Derser. But the same person playing idols for themselves over and over again is not as entertaining as production seems to think it is. It makes this season worse because it's simply not exciting from a strategy point of view. I'm frankly amazed that the other players let him sabotage their game the way they did. And they're like, oh yeah, Ben is looking for an idol. Maybe we should go too. And then they don't. They just don't. They go to sleep and let Ben continue to sabotage their game. And the next tribal council, they're like, I can't believe Ben sabotaged our game. Like, why do you think Ben sabotaged your game? Because you let it happen over and over again. It's incredible how many times they come back from tribal council shocked and amazed once again that Ben played an idol, realize that he's looking for one, and then seemingly do nothing about it. Just let him find idols unimpeded. Failing that, they at least could have made him feel more comfortable, couldn't they? I'm mad because I'm robbed at seeing how this chess game would have played out without the idols dictating the vote. Who knows what would have happened? Ashley, Lauren, and Mike were all robbed of their chances to see how this season would have played out naturally. I want to make it abundantly clear. As far as the idols are concerned, what I just said is true, but they were not robbed by production, merely by fate and their own neglect. But you know what? None of that would have mattered in a regular season of Survivor, because the final 4 vote still exists, and as long as Ben doesn't win the challenge, there's nothing he can do about it. The idols have lost all power in their game. That 1 vote still exists, and if Ben wants to survive, he needs to abide by the regular social politics that this game was found on. Oh look, Chrissy won the challenge, and now will decide to take 2 strong players to the end with her of her own volition, resulting in the most competitive final 3 since China, considering we still don't know for sure who would have won that final 3. I'm glad all this idle nonsense is behind us and Ben has nowhere to hide. Imagine my disappointment when this happened. The fundamental rules of my favorite game show, really pseudo-sport, was changed forever. I went into this season finale none the wiser about this change, as all of us were, I think. Jeff Probst called this the greatest game of social politics ever created at the top of the show, and then he drops this bombshell on us. No, Jeff, this is not the social politics. This is you rewarding Final Four players for not being able to manage their threat level. He says this change was to protect the best player at the Final Four because it always struck him as unfair that the other 3 players could just decide, well, hey, let's vote him off. But I mean, Jeff, that's the point of the game. Majority deciding, let's just vote this person off, while the actual biggest threat nods his head in agreement and goes, yes, let's do that. I would love to go to the final 3 with you. That's the mark of a good player. It's what Natalie did. It's what Sarah did. It's what Denise did. It's what Tony did. And that miraculously was a final 2. It's what Todd did. And it's what Boston Rob and Kim would have done had they not already won that final challenge and been in the final 3 anyways. First of all, the biggest jury threat already has a safety crutch, and it's called the Final Immunity Challenge. Secondly, if at any point in the game you are the person that the majority of people decide they want to vote out, then by definition, you are not the best player of the game, because the only point of the game is surviving the vote. That's it. No matter how you do it, that's the main focus of the game. You have to survive the vote. And yes, of course, you have to also get the jury votes at the end, but you won't even be eligible to get jury votes if you don't at least get there first. That's it. Surviving the vote is the one thing. That's the mark of a good Survivor player. That's the only thing you have to do. And if you can't do it, tough shit. The whole thing is similar to when Jeff changed the format of Final Tribal Council from a Final 2 to a Final 3. A lot of fan favorites were getting voted out there as well. And I actually think that change was a lot fairer than this one, because in a lot of ways, I think he was right. Sure, Final 2s are more dramatic, and there's a case to be made that it's more entertaining from a television perspective, but I actually think it's a lot fairer in a game perspective because there's a lot more wiggle room, and it doesn't give that much unlimited power to one person. And yeah, I think Final 3s are more entertaining. And we don't get Yule versus Ozzy. We don't get Parvati versus Sandra. We don't get Parvati versus Sari, which is something that we actually don't have because that season ended up being a Final 2. Most importantly, it doesn't actually damage the integrity of the game because you're not actually removing anyone's power to vote. It just means that the players have to survive one less round. Here, the fundamental core of the game is being wrecked. They're not allowed to vote. They're being stopped from voting out people. They're not allowed to vote people in the game of Survivor.
Think about that for 2 minutes and tell me you don't want to walk into the ocean.
And with idols still playable up to Final 5, it leaves no room, or virtually no room, for contestants to vote out a jury threat in the end game. Look, don't you see what you've done, Jeff? You've created a situation perfect for the Michelles of the world. Just imagine a hypothetical situation for me. Just sit there and let me think up a hypothetical situation for you. Imagine a season filmed 4 seasons prior to this one, HHH, the one you're in. Imagine there was a player who was a strategic mastermind. Let's call her Avery. And she had to vote out someone who did nothing of any strategic value in the game because they were a big jury threat because the juries were a bunch of bitter Bettys. Let's call this person, Quishelle. Now, imagine if she couldn't vote her out because of circumstances. Let's say, Poe. Let's say Poe got food poisoning at the Final 5, and she lost one round and wasn't able to vote Quishelle out. And then she gets to the Final 3 because she wasn't allowed to vote her out before the Final 3. Now, imagine if you were the reason Aubrey couldn't vote out Michelle before the Final 3 of Korong. Because that is what you're doing here. A lot of people want to claim that these two situations are entirely different, but it's the same thing. Chrissy needs to get out Ben, Aubrey needs to get out Michelle. Neither one of the winners actually deserves to win more than the runner-up if we're going on strategic value, but they're still not allowed to get the person out. Aubrey and Chrissy realize they need to get Michelle and Ben out, but they're not allowed to. Aubrey, because of bad luck, and that's just how the cards fall, and Michelle, fine, totally deserved to win the season as it was, but Chrissy did not deserve to lose the way she did. And maybe she still does lose to Devin, but you, Jeff, you yourself, robbed her of the situation to take out her social jury threat. You gave Chrissy her Michelle. You know who was really robbed here? Devin. Because he didn't even get the chance to see how he would have fared in front of a jury. It's so ironic that in trying to get rid of the fallen angel problem, they created a fallen angel out of someone who had a fair shot of winning the game. At the very least, him and Chrissy were robbed of figuring out who would be the Todd and who would be the Courtney. Odd Fiction Rambles, a user on Reddit, detailed and compiled a great list of evidence as to who would have won, and it turns out it really is a China situation. Devin and Chrissy jockeying to be the Todd instead of the Courtney, and you robbed us of that, Jeff. The worst decision production has ever made. It fundamentally broke the show, and it will never be the same. We already see the negative effects of this happening. Christians and the Wentworths of the world are getting voted out because there's no time to waste anymore. You have to get rid of jury threats as soon as you can, and I really don't get how production hasn't gotten this through their heads yet. The earlier you protect jury threats, the earlier they will get voted out. Let this season play out naturally. Go back to a Final 3 and get rid of this mandated fire-making challenge that's not even exciting in the least, and let people vote out people naturally. Why? Because that's how Survivor works. People get voted out, and if you can't avoid that fate, you're not the best player. This decision has colored the rest of the show for me. It's made every season after it not feel completely like real Survivor. Even David versus Goliath doesn't sit well with me because of that stupid goddamn twist that Reddit would have loved had it allowed a Kara win. That was impossible without it. However, they don't bother me completely because all of the outcomes that followed it, even if it was by chance, are the same outcomes that would have happened without the Final Four fire-making twist. Lauren would have still forced fire at Ghost Island, Kara would have still gotten eliminated, and Rick still would have gotten eliminated. The finales are unjustifiably boring because there's no politics anymore. With the Final Four vote, it's just practicing fire. And that's just not entertaining to me. Fire-making works as a last resort, when the Final Four is so literally divided that a fire challenge is the only option. It doesn't work as the only way the Final Four is decided. Maybe this review shouldn't end this abruptly when it's really just been a commentary on the overuse of idols and the stupidity of the fire-making challenge, and a plea to Jeff to please get rid of the biggest misfire the show has ever created, but honestly, that's all this season is worth remembering for. People act as if this were a good season before the twist ruined it, but if that were the case, the HHH tag would be on more posts than "Who would have won in that Final 3?" and "Does anyone kind of like Ben?" There would be more talking points about the season than just that ending. It's a mediocre season without the twist, and a bloody awful one without it. I know a lot of people like this season, or at least think, it's better than it's given credit for, and that it's the best of the new Dark Ages, or that the twist ruined what was otherwise a great season, but I'm sorry, I just think it's fucking awful. I know a lot of people call Millennials versus Gen X the start of the game body, flavorless era, and to me, that doesn't really start until this season. I truly believe that Game Changers is the last real, important, big, epic season of Survivor, and that Millennials versus Gen X is the last season that is all of those things and is also good. Game Changers is the last important season, but it was bad. David vs. Goliath was the last good season, but wasn't big or important. And that's just the state we're in. If I were ranking seasons based on how irrevocably they damaged Survivor, this would be dead last. It is of my personal opinion that unless they get rid of this twist, the show will never recover from this season. This is the one that truly ruined Survivor.